So, like I said, we live in a fucking society with social norms. We have these things that we all sort of abide by. And, one of them is not cutting a line. And the thing that makes me, my family thinks I'm nuts, by the way. So, like, they were like, you're still, like I said earlier, you're still going on about it. Do I need to let it go? Yes, 100% I need to let it go. I'm still working on it. Maybe now that I've made this episode, I can finally let it go because I've had to like remember the details because I'm like, oh, I'm talking about this on my podcast. Because that's what my family was like, I'm talking about all these things in society and why this was wrong. And my grandma was like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, well, you know what? I have a podcast. And even though not that many people listen to my podcast, I still have a voice and I can say something about this. And hopefully, maybe in my own little way, I can give some perspective and give some sort of enlightened, idea to why we don't allow people to get away with this shit. So, what bothers me is that we live in a society and we have a societal code, right? And one of those things is we don't cut in line, right? We form lines to create order. If there's no line, then it's just chaos. So imagine if everybody just walked up to the front and, they're just trying to take orders. Like, think about like when you're at a bar, for instance, if you go to a bar, if you're at a really busy bar, it's really chaotic, right? Because you just hope that the bartender sees you. And most of the time, in that kind of scenario, it can kind of work because it's like a more controlled type of setting. But like, think about if like you really want to like get a drink or be more comfortable, you order from a waitress or something, So like, there's thousands of people at the Iowa State Fair. It's not just like a bar with like a few hundred people in it, right? There's thousands of people. So if you don't have some sort of like order, it's just complete chaos. And it's really hard for anybody to get anything done, right? It's hard for the business to put out food in a good, timely manner. And it's hard as the customer to get what you want, right? And you're pushing and shoving and doing all of that. And it's not just a drink, it's a meal. You might be ordering several things of whatever, So, it's important not only for the business to help control the flow of food to come out, but also for the customers to get this sort of attention that they need to be able to like order. It's not just being like, can I get 3 shots of tequila? No, you're asking for specific things, right? So the point is that in general, as a society, we've agreed to these lines. We see a line form, we stand it. Sometimes people see lines form and they just stand in it not knowing what the hell they're standing in line for, right? So it's become so ingrained in us that we, in order to have a pleasant experience, we have abided to these sorts of social norms. Nobody told us that we have to do this. Nobody said, there's not a law that says you have to make a line, right? We have just amongst ourselves decided that this is a great way to keep order and to, because again too, like, I mean, that's why in bars as well, like you sometimes get fights break out or people get disgruntled really easily. Not only are they drinking, but, they're also maybe not getting the type of attention that they need because they've been sitting at the bar for a long time and the bartender hasn't given them attention. Or, they might just leave and so then the business like misses out on that kind of like on that customer, right? So there are certain things that we agree to because that is chaotic and that doesn't lend for necessarily the most optimal experience. Whereas like if you're at the Iowa State Fair, you create a nice line, or wherever the hell you're at, you create a nice line to get your food or your tickets or your whatever, right? We stand in line to get the thing that we want because we understand that there's the social order and the social code that we all have agreed to, and it's just ingrained in us. And so why am I so mad at her? Because she decided that she is above that. She decided that I am so entitled that I don't have to stand in line. And that really grosses me out the fact that not only does she come up with like a stupid ass lie to, try to manipulate me into thinking that she was standing there, like, it's just also offensive onto my intelligence that you think that I'm not observant enough to realize that no, you weren't standing here the whole time. But also just, the amount of entitlement to see that there's a long line and that she's above that she's above everybody else who's been standing there and waiting patiently for their turn. I'm not always like, oh, you should follow all the rules and do all this, like I don't always fit in to every single scenario, right? But I do understand respect. And so what she's doing is just blatantly disrespecting every single person that was there, every single person that waited in line, and decided that she's above it, she's better than it, and she doesn't have to do it.